The young and the restless spoilers breaking news escape into the night. The dim light of the moon filtered through the small, barred window of the room where Tessa was being held captive. The air was thick with fear and desperation, but her resolve burned brighter than ever. She refused to let herself become a victim, not when the stakes were so high. She had no idea how long she had been there, hours, days, or perhaps even longer. Time blurred when one was trapped like an animal. The attempted escape. It was close to midnight when Tessa made her move. She had been working on loosening one of the screws on the window's frame for what felt like an eternity. Her fingers were bruised and bloody, but she didn't stop. Finally, with one last twist, the frame came loose, and the gap was just wide enough for her to squeeze through. She glanced back at Sharon, who sat on the floor, her face pale and drenched in tears. "Sharon, come on," Tessa whispered urgently, reaching out a hand. "We have to go now before they realize what's happening." Sharon shook her head, her body trembling. "I can't. My legs. I can't move fast enough. If they catch us, they'll kill us both." Tessa's heart broke, but there was no time to argue. "I'll get help," she promised, her voice cracking with emotion. "I'll come back for you. Just hang on." With that, she slipped through the narrow opening and disappeared into the night. A desperate call for help. The cold night air stung Tessa's skin as she ran barefoot across the rough terrain. Her heart pounded in her chest, not just from the exertion but from the terror of being caught. Every rustle of leaves, every distant sound, felt like her captors were closing in on her. Finally, she found a secluded spot and pulled out the phone she had managed to hide when they took her belongings. With shaking hands, she dialed the only number she could think of, Mariah's. "Mariah," Tessa gasped as soon as the call connected, her voice trembling. "It's me. I've escaped, but Sharon, she's still there. They've got her." Mariah's voice was filled with panic. "What? What are you talking about? Who's got Sharon? Are you hurt? Where are you?" "I don't know who they are," Tessa replied, tears streaming down her face. "They always wear masks. But they're dangerous, Mariah. You have to help me." Mariah didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed her car keys and sped into the night, her mind racing with fear and determination. Masked villains. Meanwhile, back at the Captors' hideout, Sharon sat frozen in fear as her abductors entered the room. Jordan and Ian Ward, both masked to conceal their identities, exchanged heated whispers about Tessa's escape. "She won't get far," Ian growled, his voice low and menacing. "But this complicates things. We should have tied her down better." Jordan shrugged nonchalantly. "It doesn't matter. We still have the leverage we need, her friend." The masks made their intentions even more terrifying. Sharon couldn't see their faces, but their voices and words hinted at a deeper, more sinister plan. Mariah's race against time. Mariah found Tessa by the side of a deserted road, shivering and pale. Pulling her into the car, she demanded answers. "Tessa, who did this? Why would they take Sharon?" Mariah asked, gripping the steering wheel tightly as she sped away. "I don't know," Tessa cried, her voice breaking. "They didn't say anything, just locked us up and kept their faces covered. All I know is that we have to save Sharon before it's too late." The urgency in her voice spurred Mariah to drive even faster. She had no plan, no idea how to fight faceless enemies, but she knew she couldn't abandon her mother. Chance and Nick take action. The news of Sharon's abduction reached Chance and Nick shortly after Tessa's call. Chance, a skilled investigator, quickly pieced together the few clues they had. Nick, furious and worried, was determined to bring Sharon home safely. "This isn't just a random kidnapping," Chance muttered as he studied the evidence. "Whoever did this has a plan, and Sharon's disappearance is part of something bigger." Nick clenched his fists. "I don't care what their plan is. We're going to find them, and we're going to make them pay." The two men mobilized their resources, enlisting local authorities and using every connection they had to track down Sharon's captors. A narrow escape as Tessa and Mariah fled, their car headlights cutting through the darkness, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. Every shadow seemed like a threat, every car in the rearview mirror a potential pursuer. "Tessa, are you sure no one saw you escape?" Mariah asked, her voice tight with fear. "I'm sure," Tessa replied, though her confidence wavered. "But these people, they're not going to let this go." The women knew they were racing against time. Sharon's fate hung in the balance, and with every passing moment, the danger grew. A chilling discovery back at the hideout, Sharon's captors debated their next move. Ian leaned against the wall, his expression unreadable behind the mask. "We'll send a message," he said finally. "Make it clear that we're not to be underestimated." Jordan nodded, a sinister smile playing on her lips. "And if they don't comply?" Ian's eyes glinted coldly. "Then Sharon's luck runs out." This thrilling tale of danger, courage, and determination sets the stage for a dramatic rescue. As Tessa and Mariah fight to save Sharon, and Chance and Nick close in on the masked kidnappers, the stakes have never been higher. Will Sharon's captors make good on their threats, or will justice prevail in time? Accusations and despair. The tension in the car was palpable as Mariah gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white with anger. She had been silent for most of the drive, but her emotions were boiling over. Finally, she couldn't hold back any longer. "Tessa, why didn't you save her?" Mariah's voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. "You just left her there. You ran and didn't even try to help my mom." Tessa flinched, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't have a choice, Mariah. Sharon couldn't move fast enough. If I stayed, we'd both be caught again, or worse. I promised her I'd come back for her." Mariah shook her head, her frustration evident. "But now we don't even know where she is. What if they've already moved her? What if it's too late?" "I'm sorry," Tessa whispered, her voice breaking. "I tried to remember the way out, but everything happened so fast. I can't remember the exact path back to the hideout." Mariah's eyes glistened with tears, but she didn't respond. Her mother was still out there, alone and terrified, and she couldn't bear the thought of losing her. Ian Ward's fury back at the hideout. Ian Ward paced the room, his fists clenched tightly. Tessa's escape had thrown their carefully laid plans into chaos, and his frustration was evident. "This is unacceptable," he growled, slamming his hand onto a table. "We were too careless. We should have tied her down, blindfolded her, anything to prevent this." Jordan leaned against the wall, her arms crossed. Despite her calm demeanor, there was a flicker of unease in her eyes. "What's done is done," she said evenly. "The question is, what do we do now?" Ian turned to her, his eyes blazing behind his mask. "We move. Immediately. This location is compromised. If Tessa managed to escape, there's no guarantee she didn't leave a trail." Jordan nodded. "Agreed. I'll get the truck ready. But what about Sharon? She's in no condition to travel." Ian's lips curled into a cruel smile. "She doesn't have to be. We'll make her move." A forced journey. Sharon sat on the cold, damp floor of the basement, her body trembling from exhaustion. She had barely eaten or slept since her abduction, and every part of her ached. When Ian and Jordan entered the room, she could tell from their expressions, or what little she could see of them behind their masks, that something had changed. "Get up," Ian ordered, his voice cold and commanding. Sharon didn't move. She didn't have the strength to. I can't," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Ian's patience snapped. He grabbed her arm roughly, pulling her to her feet. "You don't have a choice. We're leaving. Now." Jordan appeared moments later, carrying a backpack filled with supplies. She shot Sharon a glance, her eyes devoid of sympathy. "If you don't walk, you'll be dragged," she said flatly. Sharon stumbled as Ian and Jordan led her out to a waiting pickup truck. The vehicle was old and battered, its engine rumbling loudly in the quiet night. Jordan climbed into the driver's seat, while Ian shoved Sharon into the back. Drive, Ian ordered, his tone sharp. We need to be miles away before sunrise. Mariah and Tessa's growing tension. As Mariah and Tessa reached a temporary safe house, their argument continued. The small, dimly lit room offered little comfort as the weight of their situation pressed down on them. Tessa, Mariah said, her voice trembling with both anger and fear, we need to figure out where that hideout is. If they move her, we might never find her again. I know that. Tessa snapped, though her anger was more directed at herself than Mariah. I've been trying to piece it together. There were woods, a dirt road, but it all looks the same in the dark. Mariah buried her face in her hands. This is a nightmare, she muttered. We're running out of time. Just then, Mariah's phone buzzed. It was Chance. We've got a lead, he said, his voice steady but urgent. Tessa's escape tipped us off to a potential hideout. Nick and I are heading there now. Relief flooded Mariah's face, but Tessa remained tense. What if they've already moved Sharon? She asked softly, voicing the fear that hung in the air. We won't stop until we find her, Mariah said firmly. No matter what it takes. The chase. As Jordan drove the truck through winding backroads, Ian kept a wary eye on the surroundings. Sharon sat slumped in the back, her head resting against the cold metal of the truck bed. Her breathing was shallow, and every bump in the road sent a jolt of pain through her weakened body. This isn't safe, Jordan muttered, glancing at Ian through the rearview mirror. If they're onto us, we'll be sitting ducks in this truck. Ian gritted his teeth. Then drive faster. We need to reach the next location before dawn. Unbeknownst to them, Chance and Nick were closing in. Using satellite surveillance and local tips, they had tracked the truck's movements and were now in pursuit. A race against time. As dawn began to break, the chase intensified. Mariah and Tessa joined Chance and Nick at a rendezvous point, where they planned their next move. We think we've got them cornered, Chance explained, his tone serious. But we need to move quickly before they disappear again. Mariah's heart pounded as she turned to Tessa. You're coming with us. If there's even the smallest chance you can recognize something, we need you. Tessa nodded, determination replacing her earlier fear. I'll do whatever it takes. Sharon's last stand in the back of the truck, Sharon's body threatened to give out completely. But her mind remained sharp, and she knew this might be her only chance to escape. Summoning every ounce of strength she had left, she began to fumble with the ropes binding her wrists. The truck hit a bump, and Sharon seized the moment. She yanked hard, loosening the knot just enough to free her hands. Her eyes darted to the surrounding forest. If she could jump and roll. But before she could act, the truck screeched to a halt. Ian's voice was sharp. We've got company. The sound of approaching vehicles and shouting filled the air. Sharon's heart leapt with hope and fear. Help was coming, but would it arrive in time?